Yo, so every so often I'll get questions about what games I play, what other fighting games I'm into. Sometimes people will stumble into stream and be like, I didn't know you were into this. And I figured I would just take a little bit of time to talk about the types of games I'm into so that you have some sort of expectation of what topics I might cover on this channel in the future. So to kick it off talking about fighting games, I think the trademark of a Loops game is going to be something that has a lot of openness and creativeness and expression within its combo system. So I play a wide variety of different types of games, 3D games, 2D games, platform fighters, etc. But, you know, I don't play Ultimate, I play Melee because I just like the way the combos feel in that game. It feels a little bit more expressive, a little bit more diverse, at least in terms of the different ways you can pilot your character. You know, I don't really play Samurai Showdown, I play Marvel vs. Capcom 3, you know, a game like that. Tekken, you know, I much less on the side of playing Virtua Fighter than I am playing Tekken, because Tekken sort of demands you to be varied in the ways that you combo, dependent upon like the axes that you are to the wall, the distance to the wall, the different wall breaks there might be, the types of hit that you got, etc. So that's really what attracts me to a game is, can I just sit in the training room and come up with different routes over and over, and you know, how far can I push that? I think when I was first getting into this genre, one of the things that really attracted me was just watching Marlon play. And if you go and watch like old clips of Marlon playing Marvel, just a super, super technical player, incredibly strong and also very flashy and willing to risk, you know, these high stakes moments on doing like a flashier combo just because he's capable of doing it. And I think that was something that, you know, I found really inspiring at the time and something that I still, you know, sort of aspire to. So yeah. And I do think that there is a tipping point. Like I've frequently said that Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was a little bit too much. In that game, it sort of felt like the game was so open that you could combo anything into anything pretty much. And at that point, I just find it kind of boring. You know, I do want there to be systems that I'm trying to navigate and trying to work through, that I'm just pushing to its limits rather than, you know, either being confined into a box or just saying, fuck it, there's no box anymore, right? I just need a big enough box, man. The next game I got to talk about is Dota. I love this game. I am obsessed with this game. If I was not making content about fighting games, I would be making content about Dota 2. This game is incredible. There's a few reasons why this isn't the focus of the channel, and I'll talk about that later. But let's just quickly talk about what I like about this game. First of all, every hero in this game is fucking absurd, all right? This guy, Riki, at level 6, he just becomes invisible for the entire rest of the game. He also gets a backstab multiplier, so anytime he attacks somebody from behind, he does even more damage than if he was to do it from the front. And he has at least 2 abilities that put him behind people. So he's insane, incredibly annoying. You have Lone Druid. Lone Druid is this interesting character where he summons a bear, and the bear has way better stats than the druid himself does. So he buys items, but he puts all of the items on the bear, and then he uses the bear to fight people while he kind of runs around scared, trying not to die. Super cool, super interesting. This guy has a bubble that he puts out that just stops time. Everything in it stops. Abilities stop moving. Towers can't shoot. Minions don't walk. Nobody can move. The allies can't move, by the way, so you can use this to fuck people over inadvertently. Incredibly dumb. He also has Time Walk, which is like a dash that rewinds the damage he's taken over the past 2 seconds. Super good. What else is obnoxious? Phantom Lancer. Everything this character does summons clones. His ultimate is Juxtapose. He can generate a bunch of illusions, which are just like minor clones of himself, just by auto-attacking. That's it. He has a Q that throws out a projectile and also summons a clone. And he has this move, which is like a little teleport, that also summons a bunch of clones. This is just a dash, and it makes all the clones dash, which is pretty fucked up. But this is just clones the character, all right? This game is absurd. Everything in it is absurd, and it makes the picking and banning and drafting phase really interesting because the strengths of these characters are so exaggerated, and the weaknesses of these characters are also really exaggerated. So when somebody picks a character, it means a lot for what their team is capable of doing. Okay? There's a lot to be learned just from seeing that my enemy picked Riki, right? It means like, okay, I need vision on the map. I need something with like some AoE to be able to, deal with not necessarily knowing where this person is all the time. Who's tanky, who might be able to hold like an eye or something like that. These are things that you have to think about. You have to factor in the fact that you're going to have dust on you all the time to reveal people. Again, these things just mean a lot. It also means, by the way, just to further extrapolate on this point, Riki is a character that, because a lot of his damage comes from this backstab multiplier, he kind of needs to win lane. Because if he were to leave his lane and try to go fight creeps in the jungle are going to be looking at him all the time. So he can't backstab them. So he loses a lot of the damage that he would be able to do, that he's able to get like on lane creeps that are fighting other lane creeps, or on the opponents that are in the lane that are trying to run away from him, right? So he has to win lane. If you make his laning phase really, really hard, you make his entire game really, really hard, okay? There's a lot to be learned and gained from this, and there's a ton of characters in this game, all right? This screen sort of sorts them out by the different roles they can play, but this is the actual number of characters in the game, all right? Now, another thing that I really like about this game is the items and the way that items work. So if I come to this screen, a really good example in here, I'll actually just load something up real quick. So give me just a second. All right, so items in Dota are usually useful for multiple different reasons. So if I look at this manta that I have down here, it gives me plus 10 strength, plus 26 agility, plus 10 intelligence, plus 15 attack speed, and plus 10% movement speed. So this is in general a pretty good item on any agility carry, because it's going to give you a bunch of movement speed, a bunch of attack speed, and a bunch of agility, which again, if you are an agility hero, is also going to translate into additional damage that you do on your attacks. The other two reasons why this is really beneficial is because of its active. So its active generates 2 clones for you. And these clones you have to control almost like, a real-time strategy game. I can bind them to hotkeys, I can control them, what have you. But you can send these clones down lanes, and you could have them, push this lane, you could have them farm creeps, and because they act just like Spirit Lancer does, Phantom Lancer does, Jesus. They're also able to generate clones off of his Juxtapose, his ultimate coming out, right? So that's just one example of Manta being good for pushing out lanes really safe. You don't even have to be there. The other reason it can be really good is because it peels debuffs off of you. So if I have this Jakiro, and he does have Q, okay. So he has Q, and now Phantom Lancer is slowed. But if I use Manta, he's no longer slowed. Because if you pay attention, let's see, can I just do a refresh real quick? How do I do this? Reset. Oh no, okay. I'll buy the item again. I'll level up a bunch of times. Jesus. Sorry, ear users. Holy fuck. Anyway, if you notice, when I use this Manta, he disappears for a split second and then comes back as 3 different units. So if you don't want the enemy to be able to tell which one is the real one, then you have to peel the debuffs off of the character. Otherwise, they would just be like, oh, it's the one that still has the slow on them, right? So it's sort of like a incidental use of this item that it also happens to peel debuffs off of you. Obviously, if you're like stunned or something like that, it's not going to do anything for you, but anything while you're still able to use abilities, it'll be able to get that stuff off of you. Another thing that is pretty useful about it, I had a thing in mind. Oh, because it makes you disappear for a split second, you can actually use this to dodge certain abilities. So if my opponent, I'm not going to be able to do this, but like if somebody were to cast a stun at me, if I had really, really precise timing, I could use it to phase out of existence during the frame that the stun was incoming. Again, very difficult to do, but it is an additional like skill check thing that you can do with this this item. So, having multiple different reasons why an item can be good makes buying all of the items a lot more interesting. It means like maybe this item is really good for you 90% of the time, but in this particular game, I actually don't have any debuffs that I need to be peeling off of my character. Is this still an item that I want to get, or could I maybe be greedier and pick something that doesn't have that defensive utility but still exercises all of the strong benefits that I could get off of this? Or is just being able to summon 2 clones and walk down the lane with them strong enough on its own for efficiency reasons and farming reasons that I want to buy this item anyway, even if I'm not getting the defensive utility out of it? Just additional things and additional layers to be thinking about. I think, I keep saying that. Phantom Lancer gets so much off of these additional Manta clones that it's usually just worth buying anyway. But these are the types of things that you're able to think about. And if you're able to be flexible with the types of items that you buy based off of the game that you're playing, you can have a really, really big influence on the game. The other thing is that in Dota, there are lots of very small items that you use to build up into larger ones. So you start the game with like 600 gold, right? And you have like things like Ring of Protection, this Orb of Venom, these branches, the Gauntlets of Strength. These are the strength, agility, and intelligence like starter items effectively. Circlet, which gives you +2 to all attributes. You know, a bunch of these items, the point that I'm getting at, you can buy a bunch of items at the start of the game. So if you notice, it says at the start of my game, I should be buying like these, right? I'm not sure why it has these numbers here, but it does imply that at the start of the game, I should be buying something like this. So again, this gives you the ability to chop down trees, which is nice. But this also just gives you additional melee damage to any creeps. So it helps with last hitting and farming. These are just good attributes. Again, good attributes. This builds into stuff. And these are just regen items that are able to keep you in lane. But if you were going to be dealing with a lot of dots in lane, maybe you buy more tangos rather than the salve to be able to deal with the constant like pecking down of your life that you're dealing with. Maybe if the enemy doesn't actually do that much damage, maybe you could, instead of getting a circlet, you could start by getting the Slippers of Agility, and these just help you. The guy talking over me. But maybe it helps you get like more last hits and stuff. So there's always more decisions that you can be making with the itemization and with the different heroes in the game that I think makes it really, really engaging. And another thing that I'm not going to be able to really show off here, maybe I'll be able to find a clip or something, but you just have so much agency and so much freedom in this game of Dota. Sometimes when I'm playing League and say I'm playing in top lane and I accidentally die to the enemy laner or what have you, or I just get out mechanicsed, right? It is what it is. I got outplayed, I died once. The only thing I can really do is go back to that lane and just try to out mechanics the opponent again. I don't really have the option of like leaving the lane to go to another lane, or like switching with somebody else, or going to the woods to go farm something, or, you know, I don't have the freedom to go do something else. I have to just go there and I have to be better mechanically and I have to not die again. This game isn't really like that. If you are in a lane where you're constantly dying to the enemy, you can just leave. You don't have to go back to lane over and over. You can just go somewhere else. So as opposed to League, I feel like League is very mechanics focused, where all you're really doing is trying to out mechanics the other opponent, trying to land more skill shots, trying to land, you know, trying to get more CS, trying to push harder, you know, what have you. You're just trying to force mechanics into one another all of the time. Whereas this game, I feel like, has a lot of important decision making and planning ahead, thinking strategically, and making sound decisions within the game can carry you a lot further than just being mechanically sound. There is a lot of mechanics to still be had in this game and a lot of expression there, but this is a strategy game first and a mechanical game second, I think, is really the big key differential there. Really, the core reason why I don't make a lot of Dota 2 content instead is because I feel like Dota doesn't necessarily bring out the best parts of me and my content. Not that I get like super butt mad and ragey or, you know, whatever. Rather, when I'm playing Dota, I'm so focused on playing Dota that it's very difficult for me to be entertaining at the same time. And, you know, in Dota, there's no surrendering option. So sometimes you'll find yourself in these game states where the game is starting to slip away from you. You don't really know what you should be doing about it to try to get back into the match. And during those times, I sort of find myself not really knowing what to do from a content creation standpoint. We're kind of just sitting here for 15 minutes waiting for the match to end, and I kind of resort to talking about the match and the ways that it could have gone better, which I feel like just comes across as complaining. And I don't know, I just don't feel like it's the most engaging content experience. If I do some thinking on this and try to resolve that, see if I can make it a more entertaining experience, maybe I'll experiment with this at some point, but not really sure what to do rather than record a bunch of matches and then upload only the ones that happen to go particularly well and that are entertaining the entire way through. I'm not really sure. I don't really know. All right, now Path of Exile is another game that I really enjoy. This is supposed to be, oh geez, a little bit of lag there. This is supposed to be kind of a turn your brain off and just run around and hit all the monsters kind of a game. And that's certainly how I enjoy it. When I need to relax, I can just kind of boot this up and do its thing. But PoE is also notoriously incredibly complex and a little bit difficult to get into. Very intimidating game. Mostly because people will look at the passive skill tree and just see all of the different branching paths and stuff that you're able to do and be like, man, I don't want to read all that, you know? So, you know, I totally get it. But I think for me, the appeal of this game is being like sort of a mindless turn my brain off kind of a game that is also so incredibly deep and so incredibly rich and varied that I can always be learning something new about it. And I think that is just really, really fun for me personally. So if I were to show you what the passive skill tree looks like, it looks a little something like this, all right? And it's daunting, all right? I'll give it up. I'm just gonna teleport back to town so I can talk about it real quick. But the passive skill tree does look something like this. So the passive skill tree in Path of Exile is shared between all of the different characters that you can play. So for example, I'm playing a witch, and being a witch means that I start over here. However, if I were to play a marauder, I would just start over in this section of the skill tree, and if I were to start on a ranger, I would be on this side of the skill tree. You don't have a different skill tree if you're a different character. You all use the same skill tree, but if you're a witch, it might be kind of hard to make it over to the strength and health bonuses side of the skill tree. Not impossible, just a little bit harder. So where you start and the type of character that you are gives you a really good frame of reference, and it also does enable these different ascendancies that you have. So I'm a witch, but I'm also more specifically an elementalist witch. So what that means is here, I have this Shaper of Flames passive. It means that all of my hits will ignite. I have all of my damage can ignite, and I have 25% more damage with ignites that I inflict with hits that have the highest damage type as fire. Okay, that's a really long-winded way of saying that I ignite people and I ignite them really hard. That's kind of what all of this stuff is doing. I am an elementalist. I'm inflicting a lot of fire damage, and a lot of it is just ignite based, which is a dot over time. But all of these nodes are sort of clustered together in ways. So for example, this node is all about life. So this is life, increased life. This is elemental resistance as well, and then life. So this whole node is about getting life. This whole node up here was all about fire damage. That was pretty cool. This little side here was about fire damage, but if you go down the middle, this is about lightning, and this is all about frost, right? So these things are kind of grouped together. And you also have these larger nodes that have a really big impact on what you do. So for example, this one is Eldritch Battery. It spins Energy Shield instead of mana for the skills that would normally cost mana. So this little thing over here, this shield, would normally be a shield that I have over my health. But instead, I have a thing where I'm using a lot of my health in reserve for a specific reason. So instead I needed another way to be able to cast my spells. So I've got my shield over here to do it instead. A little bit squishier, but I am also able to now activate all of these different auras that I have active all the time. Let's see, this is all about health and strength and whatnot. This is about elemental damage, right? Just a bunch of different shit that you could do, okay? What does this one do? Skills that have dealt a critical strike in the last 8 seconds deal 40% more elemental damage with hits and ailments. Your critical strikes do not deal extra damage. Ailments never count as being from critical strikes. Okay, so basically it's still tracking whether I'm critting or not, but I don't get bonus damage from the crit. Instead, I just get like a flat buff that bonuses me because I've crit, I think is, if I'm reading this correctly. And if it seems like I'm sort of stumbling over this and trying to understand this as I go, it's because 90% of the time when you're playing Path of Exile, you're just going to be following a build guide. So this is all stuff that I have grabbed from a different guide that has taught me about this specific build. The build is basically a corpse explosion elementalist, and the way that it works is I use this ability called Desecrate. Desecrate just puts a bunch of corpses on the ground, which doesn't sound very good, and it doesn't look very good either, does it? But I have a bunch of abilities that use corpses on the ground as part of their effects. So if I use Cremation, I turn a corpse on the ground into basically a volcano that does a bunch of exploding AoE damages over time. And I also have this one, which is just one big explosion, right? So if I go back into this base, the way that this works basically is try to find some more mobs. Where are you at? Right? Just cast Q a couple of times. So I cast E to put the corpses on the ground, use Q to detonate them. One important thing about this, this is the detonate dead, so it's the one that does that. This move, the second line there, it says explosion deals base fire damage equal to 7.7% of the corpse's maximum life. So because this ability scales off of the health of the corpse, basically what that means is that the higher in difficulty maps that you go and the more health enemies have, the more that this move's damage scales automatically. What that means is that for this particular build, I'm able to focus most of my time onto developing my defensive resources and keeping alive, because the damage is going to scale basically on its own just as I move into harder content. So that's a really big appeal of this. And oh, there are goons right here. Let me deal with those real quick. Cool, neat. I also have these different auras going right now. So I'm going to disable all of them, and you'll notice that basically my mana refills, right? So activating an aura puts some of my mana in reserve, so they have to be pretty powerful for me to want to do it. This one, Determination, it gives me and all of my allies additional armor, and that's pretty much it. So this is a defensive aura that I'm using basically just to help me stay alive. This one, the Defiance Banner, that's a bunch of text, but to be honest, all it's doing is also giving me increased armor and evasion rating, reduced critical strike chance on nearby enemies. This is just another defensive aura, and this is also another defensive aura. So basically, I have, to revisit some of this, I've used this Eldritch Battery to move my energy shield over to my mana, and now I'm using it as a resource so that I can keep the majority of my mana in reserve to keep these defensive auras going, and that is able to help me stay alive as I'm moving into this harder content. And again, I can focus so much on developing my defensive resources because the damage on this build scales so naturally on its own, right? So again, most of the time you're following a build, so you don't need to understand all of the different stuff that's going on, but it's really cool to me to be able to play a game sort of mind off and just, you know, focus on following a build or whatever. And then if I really want to dig in because I'm interested in it, then there's so much there for me to dig into. And this is the type of game that I feel like the longer I play it, the more I appreciate it and the more that I learn about it. And I feel like I'm never going to know everything that there is to know about this game. I don't even know if I'm capable of developing my own builds. I don't think I am, because I just don't know enough about how the entire game works. And personally, I think that's really cool. So PoE, another game I'm really excited about. This is this has a new league that's coming up that I'm planning on playing in, and you know, part of me is interested in maybe having like a private league just for the community. So a private league, you control who gets in and who else is on the server. So when you're trading with somebody, you know that you're trading with somebody else that's like from the same community as you. I think it could be kind of cool and kind of a fun way to bond and like trade items and whatnot. But let me know if you might be interested in something like that. Anyway, I'm gonna move on to the next game. Now, another game I've really been enjoying is Teamfight Tactics. If you've never seen this game or this genre of game before, it is referred to as an auto battler, but I think an easier way to understand it is that it is sort of a lobby-based drafting game. So there are 8 players in any given lobby, and what we're trying to do is trying to draft these units to build the strongest teams that we possibly can. The way that this kind of goes down is each of these units has their own stats, which you can see down here. Their different attributes here. So this one is Ghostly and a Sniper. They have their own abilities, their own attack ranges, etc. So a bunch of different ways to understand these characters. I think the most important are these attributes, right? So this character, for example, is Ghostly and a Sniper, as I said. And if we notice, it says 1 out of 2, right? So if I were to get to 2 snipers, then I would unlock this first tier of sniper benefits, right? So I'm going to play out this Kog'Maw. And now you see that because we have 2 snipers on the board, we now gain 7% damage per hex that is between these snipers and the units that they're shooting at. So not super relevant during this round, but it is something to know. Typically, the game is, when you're building a team, you could go one of 2 ways with it. You could either focus on, you know, trying to get as many of a single attribute as you can. So you could try to get like 4 to 6 snipers and then see what else you can build after that. Or you could try to go a little bit wide and get multiple different attributes at the same time. And no matter which different way you want to go, one of the important things is you want to be able to have a front line and you want to have a back line, right? So units up here that are able to take a lot of damage and protect some of your units that are back here. So let's see. Altruist Emblem, Omnivamp. That seems pretty good. Gonna reroll these. Gain 2 Exalted Champions. It's kind of interesting. I think I'm just going to go with this one for now since it's one of the more straightforward ones. We have this behemoth already. I'm thinking I'm going to sell these, level up, and then establish another warden. So the reason I'm doing that is because I think wardens right now are particularly powerful, and arranging our team in this way allows us to get 2 wardens up front. These are tankier units, so because we have 2, they receive 10% less damage. It's pretty good. And then we still have our 2 snipers in this back row, and we now have 2 ghostly units. So what do these do? Upon dealing or taking damage 6 times, ghostly units send 2 specters to haunt nearby enemies and heal 2% max health every 2 seconds. Okay, so that's what just happened right there. Haunted enemies take bonus damage for each specter on them, and they pass specters on death. Okay, so this Caitlyn now has 4 specters. That seems pretty good. So right now we've got these 3. If we wanted to continue going wide, we could focus on either finding an Arcanist, a Dryad, or an Invoker next. And let's see, what else can we talk about? I'm going to sell these 2 for now because I don't think we're going to go Story Weaver or... Well, I guess we have the 1 Warden, but I don't really need another Warden right now. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm going to not buy anything right now. So the way that this works is we have a level, right? A level 4, and that determines how many units that we can have on the board. We also have this gold, which is a resource that we use to either buy these units. We can also spend it to level up, which would allow us to place more units on the board. And we can also use it to re-roll to see more units on the board. The reason why I'm not spending this gold right now is because if you can reach certain breakpoints, then you're able to receive bonus gold. So one of those breakpoints, in fact, the most common ones, are increments of 10. So when you have 10 gold at the end of a round, you'll gain 1 bonus gold going into the next round. And that goes all the way up until 50 gold, where you would get the 5 gold that you would normally get at the end of a round, and you also get 5 bonus gold for sitting at 50 gold for having that interest. As you can see, we also just earned a gold for winning that match, which is now going to put us at that break point, and we're now going to get our 7 gold. You can also get gold for going on either win streaks or losing streaks, and that is another way to obtain this resource. But basically, my thought process right now is we're already winning our matches. We're sitting at 100 health, so it isn't really worth investing a bunch of money when we could be saving this right now, trying to get, you know, up to another higher level. The other thing about levels is that as you go up in levels, the rarity of the heroes that you see in this pool gradually go up. So, for example, if we were looking for a cost 3 unit or something like that, we might want to wait until we are a later level and then spend that gold re-rolling at the level where we are most likely to see those rank 3s. Another thing is that we are looking for duplicates. So if we were to get a 3rd Kog'Maw here, it would turn this Kog'Maw into a 2-star Kog'Maw, which would be significantly more powerful than just the 1-star variant. And another thing to consider is that all of these heroes are being pulled from the same pool. So when this person pulled this Rek'Sai and this Gnar, it took them out of the pool and made them less likely for me to find those units in the same pool, right? So there's a little bit of an automatic balancing mechanism where if one unit was particularly strong at any given moment, right now I think that character is Bard. If Bard's really, really powerful, and there's like 15 Bards in the pool, and everybody wants it, well, everybody can't get a 2-star Bard. It's just not possible. And by everybody wanting that same unit, it makes it harder for everybody else to find that unit. So the really strong units become harder to find, and the units that are perceived as weaker become really easy to find, which sort of makes it its own sort of balancing mechanism, right? I think it's neat. I'm going to buy this Warden pretty much exclusively because I think this Amumu is crazy good. What is this unit? This is a Sage and an Exalted. I don't think we really need that right now. But yeah, we can also look at the opponent's different tables to see what they're building. It looks like this person has some sort of mythic comp going on. This person also has double snipers and a couple of behemoths up front, it looked like. This person has, it looks like a Story Weaver with wardens kind of thing going on. Something like that, right? You can do a little bit of scouting and see what you're up against and try to plan ahead of time. You also have these items on the side that you can combine to create different items. So the reason why I've been holding off on attaching these items to units right now is because I'm not super committed to what's on the board at the moment. I am relatively committed to the wardens and the snipers at this point, and the ghostly stuff I think is pretty cool, so I kind of want to try that. But, you know, I don't know necessarily if I'm going to see a bunch of one unit or another, or what's taken out of the pool or what have you, so I'm just, you know, sort of waiting to see what's going to be more powerful for me to attach items to. Kind of what I'm looking for. Let's see. I think at this point I kind of want to start rolling to see if we can get any of our units leveled up, because having a bunch of 1-stars on the board does not feel super great. Get a 2-star Alawi, that's pretty nice. I'm gonna put some tanky items on her, call it a day. See if that helps out, I think it will. And I'm gonna sit and wait at the 10 mark. Let's see how this goes. But yeah, we're not gonna sit here and play out the entire match. I just wanted to give a little bit of an example and an insight into why I think this game is so interesting. I think this is a relatively low stress game to play, because even if you're trying to take it seriously and play ranked and learn as much as you can about it, you know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of luck involved, and the combat's out of my hands, literally. So, you know, it doesn't feel super stressful. And ultimately, to go up in MMR, you just need to be in the top 4 of the lobby that you're in. So there's a lot of like, oh, well, you know, I didn't win, but at least I came 5th. You know, I didn't lose that much type of thing going on. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I feel about it. But yeah, for now, I'm going to move on and talk about another game. I'm going to play this out off screen. Actually, fuck all that. I'm tired of recording footage, so I'll just talk about the rest. In terms of shooting games, usually I enjoy like faster, low TTK games, so Call of Duty was always my go-to, but I'm incredibly tired of that formula, so recently I've been enjoying Battlefield instead. Something about the larger maps and being able to push objectives with a bunch of people has been a nice change of pace. I've been really enjoying that. In terms of card games, currently I'm playing the Dragon Ball Super card game Fusion World that's just recently come out, both on the digital client and also in person. I'm a big fan of Bandai's trading card game design, so I play both that and One Piece, and I've really been enjoying those things. And occasionally I just like throwing myself down rabbit holes of things that I feel like I don't understand. There was a period of time a little while ago where I got really into sim racing for a little while, things like iRacing and stuff like that. That was a lot of fun, and I still do that from time to time today. There was a period of time last year where I got really into Warhammer. I was watching matches like every day and trying to do a bunch of reading on how you play the game and building armies and planning and all types of stuff. And then eventually I got to actually play it and learned that it kind of wasn't really for me, but, you know, just something to throw myself down. And I was also interested in like competitive Mario Kart, just because I think Mario Kart is a ton of fun. Playing games competitively is a ton of fun. What does competitiveness even look like in an environment like that? So I got into that for a little bit. Just whenever I stumble into something that I feel like I don't understand very well, I feel compellment to try to understand it, to know if I even like it or not, because I don't like to write things off. And yeah, you know, I just really enjoy learning about new things, and I think that that's something that we'll learn to do together on this channel at some point. But thanks for tuning in and listening to me ramble about all this stuff for a little bit. I'm gonna get going for now, and I'll talk to you all really soon. All right, peace.